opening song this morning is Let There Be Peace on Earth. Another beautiful day here in paradise. If only we could live up to that song. I've been singing that song a long time. I like it a lot. I wish we could all hear it all the time. Welcome. Sunday morning in Venice at our beloved UCOV, Unitarian Universalist congregation of Venice. We hope to be a beacon of liberal thought and a place where you can come and find hope, dreams, and I guess a little happiness. I see we're getting smaller and smaller. We're kind of being boiled down to that point where you can actually make the sauce. Is anyone here for the first or second or third time today and be willing to stand up and introduce themselves? Wow. We got to go out there and do a little, yeah. So I'm assuming that since so many of us went north, there are a lot more of us out there on the internet. Good morning to you guys. We miss you and have a good time, and we'll be anxious to welcome you back in the winter. We want, yes.
I'm leaving today, tomorrow.
I didn't even want to ask. It was so depressing when I asked last week, and so many people stood up. Is there anyone else who's leaving with Kendra? Oh my goodness. Somebody lock the borders. We can't keep letting them go. Although I will say, just by the building around here, nobody's locked any borders in a long time to get in anyway. We are here to help you on your path. We're not quite sure we care what that path is. We're hoping it's a path we enjoy because we want to go with you. That path, you could be starting on that path or you could be at the end of your journey. It may be a path that you take us on and we have enjoyed the trip. Maybe we don't enjoy the trip, but you may have taught us something that makes us know that we can make our path better by maybe planting a few different flowers. Good morning. Mo Morrison will be giving you the announcements.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Mo Morrison, a recently elected member of your Board of Trustees. We will now be passing the baskets as I let you know what events are going to be occurring this week. First of all, there's a general announcement about the UUA General Assembly. This will be held in Portland, Oregon from June 22nd through June 26th, and virtual registration is available as well as in-person registration. That's the UUA General Assembly in Portland, Oregon, June 22nd through the 26th. Details are available at uua.org. Today at 4 p.m., there's a Buddhist Wisdom Sunday with Jim Pekarsky, and that will be held in Asta Linder or on Zoom. Tomorrow at 1 o'clock in Waters Hall is the Writers Group. Also tomorrow at 1 o'clock, there will be a silent sitting and walking group meditation in Asta Linder or Zoom. Tuesday evening here in the sanctuary is an interesting lecture from the Venice Area Historical Society. They will be hosting this Intalia lecture series. The title is Gone But Not Forgotten, BLE Built Buildings in Venice, Florida, Lost to the Wrecking Ball. This will be given by Gary Youngberg. It's free and all are welcome. Other events this week include mat making Saturday in Waters Hall, as well as Saturday 10 a.m., Waters Hall for mat making, and a Turger meditation 10:30 and 3 p.m. in Asta Linder. We have an important update from Serena Canarelli regarding health and wellness to finish up our announcements today. Serena?
Good morning. You probably know me as a member of the Board of Directors, but I am also a former member of the UCOV COVID Task Force, which was appointed by the board in early March of 2020, 26 or 7 months ago, to research the science on COVID-19 and recommend to our Board of Directors decisions relating to closing, masking, opening, distancing, vaccinations, etc., for our entire campus. Since the pandemic hit Sarasota County in late January, February of 2020, our settled minister was on sabbatical, and Reverend Dennis McCarty was here as our sabbatical minister. The board decided to close the congregation. The sanctuary, the building was closed, the campus was closed in March of 2020. The COVID task force, very quickly, I don't want to go backwards too much. The COVID task force was comprised of Reverend Dennis, Pam Palmer was the president at the time. She was on the task force for a while. Claire Harrison was the secretary of the board. Pat Franks, Jan Simon, and myself. Jan Simon, Pat Franks, and myself, all three of us have science and healthcare backgrounds. I volunteered to do the research. The task force was actually dissolved when we reopened on June 6th of 2021. The sanctuary was reopened because we met the criteria that was established by the task force. We brought that information to the board, and they approved the opening with the following: masking, distancing, encouraging people to get their vaccinations. We've been up and down for 2 years, but we've remained open, and we have worked very hard to try to keep our congregation safe. How many of you here are fully vaccinated? meaning great, okay? And that is the thing that has saved this congregation and is going to continue to save all of us in this community. I want to share with you just really quickly how we, in this community, not in this community, in this county, understand the risk level that we have. It's a little bit tricky, and the information comes from the Center for Disease Control. All of you are probably, hopefully, familiar with the CDC, but they have very specific criteria set up now to determine whether a community is at low risk, medium risk, and high risk. Now, there are other coronavirus trackers out there. There are several. New York Times has a coronavirus tracker system. COVID Act Now is another resource. We've tried to follow as much as we have been able the UUA guidelines. I would like to make a point of saying that we opened up a lot sooner than many other UU churches. But we felt safe doing that because we set up very specific criteria, we met it, and we stayed safe for a very long time here. One of the disadvantages that I had in particular, because I was doing the research, is that there was no freedom. I had no authority to really ask people if they had been vaccinated, to show vaccination proof. So it was just trying to go via the pastoral care system where people would give me feedback on who was ill, who wasn't ill, and how sick were they. And that was very difficult, but we did it. And I have come up with the number of people in the 26 months that I have a fairly good feeling that, not good feeling, I don't have a good feeling that they had COVID, but that the number is pretty accurate. And that number is about 30 people. Now, there may be more, there may be less. The interesting thing about that is probably 15 of them have been in the last couple of weeks. So, but the good news there, it hasn't really been in here, but it has been in some of the congregate settings where people are living. So, and they have a whole different set of rules that they have to follow. But if you're living in your own home and you've been vaccinated, you're probably fairly safe. And according to the CDC, we are in a low-risk area. Now, my husband showed me on his phone this morning the top 50 ranked highest case numbers and highest risk in the state of Florida. And we were up there pretty high, which made me feel like, whoa, what data am I looking at? So it's very complicated because we do not have, no matter what the newspapers are saying, and I have a collection, believe me, I could do a scrapbook. I have 2 black notebooks filled with data. COVID numbers still on the rise. That was in May. May 11th, COVID numbers still on the rise. Patient counts belie cases and hospitalizations. I don't really use this information as valid data. I mean, I don't want to say it's completely wrong, but when I look at the CDC, when I look at the New York Times coronavirus tracker, when I look at COVID, when I get information from the Mayo Clinic and other big settings that really follow this data, I feel comfortable with CDC's assessment of where we are. The hospitalizations right now are primarily in unvaccinated people, and the hospitalizations are very low. And there's a way to track each hospital, how many ICU beds. And one of the things that the CDC is only looking at really 2 or 3 metrics right now to track. And it's all at the community level. So county by county is where you get the information. On Thursday morning, I had to report to the board what my findings were for the last couple of weeks. Florida only reports every two months, and I don't, I could spend a week here talking about the anomalies that Florida has in terms of reporting accuracy, but the risk level was medium when I reported it to the board. And there's criteria, very specific criteria on how they come to that. And it has to do with the couple of metrics that they look at. The first one, of course, is the new COVID cases in the county. But generally speaking, they are undercounted. Why? Because unless you have gone into a facility, a place where they are giving the PCR test, if you're doing it at home, you're probably not calling the county and saying, hey, I'm positive, or hey, I'm negative. So we don't have a good count of all of those people who are testing at home. Okay, so that's not a good thing, but we have to accept it because it's reality, because people are not going to call in and report their positive test. However, what they are doing, report with their positive test, is they are following the CDC directions. Masking up again, quarantine, isolating, going through the whole system. So anytime you go to the CDC website, you're going to find a procedure to follow if you have tested positive, whether it be home or tested in a community setting. The other good news is, and there are more breakthrough infections occurring now. And again, that is because, number one, the efficacy of all of these vaccines is not terribly long, and they're not 100% effective. There is no vaccine that is 100% effective. So even though you've been fully vaccinated, you do still have some minimal susceptibility. But the good news is that if you do get it, you are probably not going to get very sick. And in the past couple of weeks, I've talked to several of our members who have been sick with COVID, tested positive. And basically they're saying to me, it's like I had a cold. You know, I feel a little sick for a few days, and then I'm turning around and getting better. Now, if you are talking with your healthcare provider, they may offer you, if you test positive and you are feeling sick, there are medications available that can kind of help you through. In New York, where my family lives, my children, actually my son just called this morning, it has gone through his entire household. The only one that hasn't had it yet is their 4-year-old daughter, and that's very difficult to keep her isolated and to keep them isolated. But my son tested positive yesterday, and his wife was positive last week. She went on the medication, one of the medications, and turned around very quickly. So that's all good news, because if we can try to put this in the context of what has happened with flu in this country over the years, even though some of these variants are much more dangerous, we are moving slowly into a more endemic phase. And we need to learn, and people have heard me say this and they go, oh yeah, we need to learn to live with it. So how do we do that? And I want to just very quickly tell you, I'm almost done. Because we are now designated as a low risk, even though this thing that my husband had on his phone this morning said we were still pretty high, they're looking at unvaccinated people when they're looking at the numbers more than they are vaccinated people, even though the CDC is keeping track of both of them. For individual and household level preventive behaviors versus community level prevention strategies for those who are in a congregate living, there are different recommendations. For all of us who are living at home or in independent living, number one, stay up to date with your COVID vaccines and boosters. If you want to wear a mask, wear it. It's not going to hurt you if you feel more comfortable. As individuals, we all have different levels of risk. Some of us, when we were on the task force, we had kind of two camps of people. We had those who felt we never should close. No, we can't close. We have too many elderly people. This is their home. And we had the people who, why don't we stay open? Why don't we just stay closed forever until, it disappears? And it was very difficult for us to come to a middle ground, but we did. We came up with the 3 criteria. Okay, follow the CDC recommendations for isolation and quarantine if you are at high risk. And we are not even, I want to be careful when I say this, you probably should discuss with your doctor, your primary care physician, whether you are at high risk or not. There's all kinds of different opinions about there, but the best thing to do is to talk with your own doctor as to whether or not you are at high risk. And wear a mask when you want to. My suggestion is, we have lots of masks here, I brought some more this morning. If you go into large public places, Publix, Walmart, whatever, and you feel uncomfortable, wear a mask. I do it sometimes. It's not going to hurt you. Okay, and I'm available if you have any questions at all. The CDC, and I know they get knocked around quite a bit, and this whole system has been politicized. I think they're doing a great job, and the National Institute of Health, a great job of following all of these viruses. And I just want to leave you with one more thing. How they look at the viruses, and I don't know if I can find it right now. Okay, it's here. They have, for example, when they, here they are, here it is, how variants are classified. They have 4 classifications when they're looking at different variants. Variants being monitored, variants of interest, variants of concern, and variants of high consequence. The Delta virus was a virus of high consequence. In January of 2022, we had the highest number of cases in the whole 26 period, in just this past January. And that was basically when Delta, it hit us a little bit earlier in the late winter, but January 22nd, the cases were like 800 or 900 a day on average in a 7-day period. So I've been trying to do an update to the congregation. I keep getting bumped, but I was determined today I wasn't going to get bumped. And that's all I have to say. Which is probably
Wonderful. Thank you, Serena. We appreciate you taking the time to research all that information and to provide us with the most up-to-date guidance. Thank you. So we will now hear a Chopin prelude.
Thank you, Lisa. That was lovely. To the four directions. Spirit of the east, spirit of air, of morning and springtime, be with us as the sun rises. In times of beginning, times of planting, inspire us with the fresh breath of courage as we go forth into new adventures. Spirit of the south, spirit of fire, of noontime and summer, be with us through the heat of the day and help us to be ever growing, warm us with strength and energy for the work that awaits us. Spirit of the west, spirit of water, of evening and autumn, be with us as the sun sets and help us to enjoy a rich harvest, flow through us with a cooling, healing quietness, and bring us peace. Spirit of the north, spirit of earth, of nighttime and winter, be with us in the darkness, in the time of gestation. Mo Morrison will be lighting the chalice for us.
Let's light the chalice with Remembering Our Unity by Katie Romano Griffin. May the flame of this chalice, the symbol of our faith, connect us to all who have come before us, all who are with us in body and spirit, and all who are yet to come into being. May it serve as a reminder of our unity and connection across all time and space. Pam will now lead us in celebrations and concerns.
Turn it on. Does anybody have any joys to share this morning?
I hope everybody will join me in thanking Ruth and Ken Boysworth for maintaining and staining the wooden benches around the building so that we can all enjoy sitting out and enjoying the outside. So thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Pat Wellington. I just want to say we went to the West Coast Black Theater Troupe yesterday, and I'm still thinking about how wonderful the production was. It's on until May 29th. 2 one-act plays put on by single individuals. And we found out that the woman who did the first one also wrote it and put it all together. Wonderful singer. It's about the life of Nell Carter. The second one is about Muhammad Ali, and the young man jumped around the stage, jumping rope and everything. I would urge you to go and support them. The place was not completely filled, and I was sorry for that.
Anyone else? I'm joyful that I'm alive on another beautiful day. The days have been just so beautiful. I almost can't stand it. I'm waiting for something to happen. Any concerns?
I'm waiting for you to get all the way over to the other side. We are a joy. My wife Pat and I are going on vacation tomorrow. We're heading to Italy for 2 weeks. Pat's been there, I have not, and we have a full 2 weeks full of wonderful events. We even checked the weather report. It looks good, so we're good to go. We'll be back in 2 weeks.
I understand you haven't packed yet, though.
That's true.
She has. Do we have any concerns?
Hi, my name is Phil Haxel, Wednesday, I was in a car accident where I was driving down Tamiami Trail and some woman from a side street came across and slammed into the passenger side of my car. There were no injuries except for my nerves, which are still shot. And so I don't have collision insurance, so I'm going to have to go through the process with her insurance company because all I have is liability. So the whole process is going to be nerve-wracking. Thank you.
So sorry. So glad you're okay, though. It's great. Anyone else? Any concerns? I have a concern. I have a concern that we live in a world where people are doing the most outrageous things just to get attention. Richard turned the TV on this morning, and I cannot believe that someone wanted to do something so horrible in my home state. And I hope at some point we learn how to stop it. Okay. Sorry, if those of you who don't know, there was a shooting in Buffalo where 10 people were killed in a grocery store. People just going about their ordinary life. But it was actually broadcast. It was live streamed. Did it? You live streamed it. It's sad. It's sad. We join those who enjoy. I love to be at least a little part of that trip to Italy, and everyone's. And Ken, I hope the seats are dry when I sit on them. Katie Green, my good friend. I've been telling stories with Katie Green now for almost 30 years. We met by chance, and we were brought together by the world of storytelling and the creativity of the wonderful J. O'Callahan, who, if you ever have a chance to hear, definitely do. So Katie is going to tell us a little bit about what she's going to tell us about.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. I'm fine right now. Thank you for asking. Okay. I'm honored and humbled and excited to be with you this morning. And while it says I'm going to be talking about Egyptian mythology, I'm not going to be telling you all of the stories of Isis and Osiris, although I love those stories and they're very intriguing and interesting. I'm going to be talking more about the foundation of Egyptian mythology and religion that brings us to those stories. In ancient Egypt, religion, politics, and magic are all intertwined. Isn't that a delightful thought? My Presbyterian friend said, Katie, you really shouldn't say magic because that means fooling. But no, that's not the magic that the Egyptians were concerned with. The Egyptians were concerned with the magic that a caterpillar can create a cocoon or a chrysalis and turn into a butterfly. The magic that I might have a baby growing inside me and it will come out and be a brand new person. That's all magic. Now, the Egyptians believed in a concept called Mayat, that represented divine order in the universe. She stands for balance, harmony, the way things should be for people to live comfortably. Mayat is usually pictured as a woman with outstretched arms that are wings. She has a feather on the top of her head. Sometimes she is symbolized only by the feather. And it was a personal goal in ancient Egypt. We might think of it today as we live our lives. It's a personal goal to uphold Mayat, because truth, honesty, and respect affect the order of the universe.
Wow. Lisa's gonna do the interlude, which is by Grieg. What's his first name? Edvard Grieg. I love it.
lovely, thank you. Every culture, every religion has stories. Stories tell us who we are. Myths tell us how and why things are. Religion tells us what happens when we die, why we should be good. The ancient Egyptians, the culture existed as late 8,000 years ago. But most of us are familiar with the pyramids and in the earlier dynasties, and then the 18th and 19th dynasties, which were only about 4,000 years ago. The stories were written on the walls of the pyramids, on the walls of the temples and tombs, the walls of coffins even. And during the 4,000 years, these stories changed and morphed. There's many, many creation stories. My favorite is one that lasted very popularly through most of the Egyptian ancient times, and I'll share that one with you. Long, long ago, there was nothing. No light, no dark. Only watery chaos. And then a muddy mound rose through that water, and it was Ta, the one who invented himself from nothing. It was Ta who invented everything. Ta invented the gods, the goddesses. He invented their Kas, their souls. Ka invented work, people, offerings, justice. How? Ta imagined them in his heart. In ancient Egypt, they believed that all intention comes from the heart. And then he named them with his mouth, and they came into being. Okay? Slide. Oops, we need a slide. Oh, I don't see it back there, so I don't know what's happening. I'm sorry. Do I get to see it here? Oh, okay. All right, well, just a minute. Huh? Oh, okay. But I'm not ready for this one. I want top. Okay. Doesn't he look sort of like the Oscar? Yeah, right. Okay. It said that Ta stands on the foundation of Mayat, of balance and harmony. And you could understand why the Egyptians would find that so very important, that things be dependable, because after all, their life depended on the flooding of the Nile so that they could grow their crops. It's also very interesting that the Pharaoh, it used to be the king, but then he was changed into the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh was considered a god, for how else could he possibly keep Lower Egypt, the Delta, and Upper Egypt, the mountains, into one country? He was considered the son of God. Isn't that interesting? The son of Ra. Next, this is Mayat. I often think of her as a symbol of peace. It was believed that when a person lives in a manner that's upholding Mayat, or balance, harmony, with their surroundings and the universe, the world, that they are less tempted to step into what the Egyptians called the dark area, that they are less tempted to do things that might disturb Mayat, disturb the balance of their own life, of the life around them, and of the universe. What a lovely thought, huh? Okay. Naturally, the Egyptians were aware of the sun. The great sun god Ra brings everything to life. There's one short little story that's part of a longer story that says the goddess Isis created a snake out of clay, and she laid it on the ground, but she could not make it come to life. It only came to life when the sun shone on it, because the sun brings everything to life. So it was then, so it is today. And here you see the names of the sun god Ra through the times. Let's see, there is Ra, Atum, Atum Ra, Kepri, Ra, Herakate, Amun, and Aten. And the concepts changed during the time. But Kepri is the sacred beetle. And here you see a picture of an amulet, a sacred image in Egypt. The beetle was considered a metaphor for, well, it wasn't even a metaphor for them because it was magic, it was all mixed up, for life, for rejuvenation. Because some of you might know that the beetle makes a ball out of mud and out of dung, and it rolls it and rolls it and rolls it until that ball might be 4 times as large as the beetle, and still that beetle is pushing it around. And then the female beetle lays her eggs inside that ball of dung. And the eggs, of course, become larvae and then emerge from the ball as beetles. Okay? So, Kepri is the image of the beetle pushing the sun over the horizon. And there's my favorite. I have a picture of this guy in my office. Some people call him Thoth. It looks like it should be Thoth, but in the hieroglyphs, there are no vowels. And so nobody really knows how the Egyptians really spoke. And there is a hieroglyph for the sound T for T. There's a hieroglyph for the sound H for H, but there is no hieroglyph for TH as we know it. So I prefer to say Tahut. And in the story that I will share with you, you will hear me say Tahut. Tahut is the god who invented writing. And because he has the head of an ibis, we assume that he originated in the delta. And of course, we're quite familiar with the ibis here in Florida. It said that Tahut wrote a book that contained all of the secrets of the gods and goddesses, all of the mysteries of the gods and goddesses. Next. When a person dies, all the gods and goddesses travel across the sky in the daytime in the solar boat. But actually, the Egyptians had the gods and goddesses around them all the time. They had over 2,000 gods and goddesses. But they were always there and always aware of them. And it was important to always be grateful and acknowledge their presence. I want to share with you, have you noticed lately that there's kind of a new thing that's going around, and that's to have gratitude or to express your gratitude? I was kind of tickled to see that this is actually an ancient ritual of the goddess Hathor. The goddess Hathor was the goddess of love, of music. And the ritual is one that people were expected to do every morning. And you don't have to have any sort of altar, don't need any special equipment, you just need your hand. And the ritual is when you first wake, you name 5 things for which you are grateful. Okay. So when a person dies, I'm just going to go over this really quick. I'm sure everybody's probably seen this image. It's from the Papyrus of Ani. It was prepared for a high priest named Hunefer. And the Egyptians believe, and this is just something that only wealthy people could do. But the Egyptians believed that they were to go through the Hall of Judgment, where they were tested on whether they told the truth or able to speak the truth. And they had to testify. Usually there were 42 different testifying things that they had to say. But basically they all went around things around, I haven't lied, I haven't stolen, and stealing from the gods was major. And I haven't caused harm. And that statement was sort of manipulated according to a person's station in life. Anyway, the person had to tell the truth, and then he removed his heart. His heart was weighed against the feather of Mayat. Did he live according to Mayat, keeping balance and harmony in his life? If he did not, then the heart would be heavier than that feather. The heart would be fed to that creature you see standing next to the scale. And Mat is made up of a crocodile, a lion, and a hippopotamus. And he's the great devourer. When he devours that heart, if the person has not lived in Mayat, that person ceases to exist, which is the worst possible thing that could possibly happen. So if the goal is to get through that hall of judgment and to go to the field of reeds, R-E-E-D-S, reeds, where your life, and the Egyptians believed that there was one continuous life. It doesn't stop when you die. There's one continuous life that continues, and after the hall of judgment, you go to the field of reeds where your life continues just as it was in earth, minus danger, destruction, death. Sort of like heaven, I guess, that people have for people who have that concept. So I'm going to tell you a story about this young fellow. His name is Satni Kamos, and Satni Kamos was actually a real person. He was the son of the great pharaoh Ramesses II, who is the pharaoh who ruled longer than any other pharaoh. He died when he was 96 years old. And most of the temples that you see and admire were built during his reign. But this was his son. Next slide, please. The story I'm going to tell you is about Satni Kamos, that young man, and this is another statue of Satni Kamos. This one happens to be in Cairo. The other one was in Berlin. Satni Kamos and Neferkaptah. My friends tell me that these names are hard for people because we're not used to hearing them in our ears, and so I wanted you to be able to see them, and maybe they wouldn't bruise your ears quite so much. But I can't change their names to Bill and George when I tell the story. Okay, let's go to the story. This is a blank because I don't want you to be distracted. Okay. Now, can you hear me okay still? Okay. This is where I have to apologize to you because it's almost 12. And you've been sitting for a while. And I'm really going to ask you to do something. I want those of you who are comfortable standing to stand up and just wiggle for a minute. Okay, and take a butt break. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay, I just want you to be comfortable while I tell you the story because I want you to like it and enjoy it. Thank you. Satni Kamos was the son of Ramesses II. Ramesses II had 196 children. He had many wives, of course. But Satni Kamos was the second son born to the High Queen Utsnofret. Satni Kamos was probably the most brilliant of all of Ramesses' children. He learned how to read the hieroglyphs when he was 4. He could read them better than any of the high priests. He was brilliant, he was curious, he was lovable. And as he grew, he became even more curious. As he grew, he wanted to know everything. Well, he married, he had a nice wife, he had children, and because he was so brilliant and so outstanding, his father, Ramesses II, appointed him as the high priest of Ptah, a very important position. Now, when Satni Kamos became the high priest of Ptah, he spent most of his time, of course, in the temple of Ptah. would go into the darkest, most sacred parts, and he would read the hieroglyphs that hardly anybody could read. And while he was back there one day, he heard a shadowy voice come to him, and it said, "Why are you reading that when you could be reading the Book of Tahot?" He could be reading the Book of Tahot. Whoa! If he could read the Book of Tahot, he would know everything. He would know all of the secrets, all of the spells. He could control the universe. What power would that be? And the voice continued. The Book of Tahot is found in the tomb of Neferkaptah. And his tomb is in Saqqara, near the Step Pyramid. Whew. Satnikamas could think of nothing else. He went directly to his father, Ramesses II, and said, "I know where the Book of Tahot is. I'm going to go get it." And his father said, No. That's ridiculous. That's a dangerous thing to have in your possession. Don't do it. Satnikamas went to his younger brother, Anchoras, and he told Anchoras, "I know where the Book of Tahot is. You want to come with me to get it?" And Anchoras said, "Let's go." And so the two brothers went into Saqqara, into the desert, to find the tomb of Neferkaptah. Now, you know, in the desert, the sand moves around, and Neferkaptah was a priest from 300 years previously. So they searched and searched for a long time. I don't know how long, but they did find a stele that had Neferkaptah's name on it and all of his accomplishments. And so they knew that was where the tomb was, and they started digging and digging and digging. And sure enough, they found the tomb. They found the entrance of the tomb. And while Anchoras did not want to go into the tomb because one does not disturb the dead, Satnikamas went into the dark tunnel. All he could hear were his own footsteps and the beating of his heart. But down at the end of that tunnel, he could see there was a light. And he went toward that light, and he came to the burial chamber of Neferkaptah. And it was fully illuminated, just like this room is. He could see all of the pictures of Neferkaptah on the walls, drawn there so Neferkaptah's life would continue forever and ever. And there was Neferkaptah pouring libations to the gods. There he was having a feast. There was Neferkaptah watching. Is this still working? Is it going in and out? Would it be more comfortable for you? Is it? Okay. Sorry. And there was Neferkaptah feasting and watching beautiful dancing ladies. But in the burial chamber, there was Neferkaptah's mommy and 3 Ka statues. The Ka statue holds the soul of the departed. But there were not 3 mummies there. There was the Ka statue of Neferkaptah, the Ka statue of his wife, Ahura, and a Ka statue of his little son, Merib. But oh, that's strange, he thought. But he reached over to pick up that Book of Tahot, and all of a sudden he heard a voice, "I wouldn't touch that if I were you." The Ka statue of Neferkaptah's wife, Ahura, had come to life. "I wouldn't touch that if I were you. I'll tell you what happened to our family. All because my husband, Neferkaptah, had to have the Book of Tahot." Well, Satnikamas could tell he was in for a story, and he liked stories. So he settled to listen. "My husband," she said, "was just like you. He was a high priest of Ptah. He was the son of a pharaoh. And he wanted to know everything. He had an insatiable thirst for knowledge. One day, when he was in the darkest part of the temple, he found a scroll, And he read that scroll. It was almost crumbling, but he could read the hieroglyphs there. And the hieroglyphs told him that the Book of Tahot was at the bottom of the river in Upper Egypt, near Coptos. It is in an iron chest. Well, now Satnikamas knew where the Book of Tahot was. Woo-hoo! Or Neferkapta knew where the Book of Tahot was. He went to his wife and told her. She said, "There's such thing as too much knowledge." He went to his father, the Pharaoh, and said, "I know where the Book of Tahot is. Give me the royal barge." And his father said, "Neferkapta, getting the Book of Tahot in your possession will only cause disaster." But my husband Neferkapta would not stop. He got the royal barge. His father gave him everything he wanted. So Neferkapta and I and our son, we climbed onto the royal barge and we sailed to Upper Egypt. And that's 500 miles away. I can't tell you whether it was weeks or months that they sailed. When they reached Coptos, they were greeted by the priests of Isis and Osiris, and they had to participate in all of those rituals. 4 days it took, and my husband Neferkapta was so impatient to get on with finding that Book of Tahot. And all the time that he was participating and waiting, he was collecting beeswax. And he created a small boat with beeswax, and he made little people that he put into the boat. And then, because of his power as a magician, he put that boat into the river and said a spell, and yes, it surprised him too. It became a boat with real men inside. And Neferkapta said, "Row for me, row for me." And those men rowed the boat to a point that was over where the Book of Tahot sat on the bottom of the river. Through a magic spell, Neferkapta made the waters divide. He looked down and there was a large iron chest on the bottom of the river. But all around the chest were snakes and scorpions guarding it. Again, with a magic spell, he put them all to sleep. And then my husband Neferkapta went down to the bottom of the river and stood on the soil next to the box. But along came an enormous snake. And it was the snake that no man could kill. He was sure of that. The snake raised its head, but my husband Neferkapta took his sword out and cut the head snake off. The snake's head off. And the snake was rejoined. And again, it rose to attack my husband. And my husband cut the head off again. Once again, the head and the body joined and started attacking. This time, my husband picked up some sand from the bottom of the river, and when he cut the head off, he threw the sand on the rest of the body, and they could not attach, and the snake writhed and died. And now my husband could approach the iron box. Through his magic, he opened the iron box, and inside the iron box there was a cedar wood box. Inside the cedar wood box there was a box of ebony and ivory. And inside the ebony and ivory box there was a silver box. Inside the silver box there was a box made of gold. And inside that gold box was the Book of Tahot. My husband stood there, and immediately he opened the book and he read the first page. And when he read those spells, he could enchant the earth. He could understand the language of all of the animals and the creatures of the sea. My husband could see the gods and goddesses. He turned the page, read the second page, and then my husband could enchant the universe. He could move the stars and the sun. He could bring people back to life. He went back to the boat, closed the waters up. Now, I had stayed on shore, sure that there would be a disaster for my husband. As soon as he was on the boat again and closed the water, my husband, Neferkata, said, "Row for me, row for me." And those men rowed the boat back to Coptos, where I was waiting. I had been crying the whole time. But my husband jumped off of the boat. He handed me the Book of the Hot, and I read the first page. And I could enchant all these things and understand the language of the animals. I turned the page. I read the second page, and then I knew the motions of the stars and the sun. And I gave the book to our son, and he, too, read the Book of Hot. And then my husband, because he wanted to make sure that he would never, ever, ever lose all of these spells and all of this knowledge, he took a new papyrus and he copied all of the spells on it and then rolled it up, and he soaked it in beer. And then he drank the beer, and all of those spells were inside him and part of him forever. But the god Tahot, up in the solar boat, he knew what had happened, that my husband had taken the Book of the Hot. He had stolen from the gods. And he went to the sun god Ra and told Ra. Ra said, "Punish him as you will." And Tahot wanted a terrible punishment for all of us. We got into the royal barge and we started to drift back to Lower Egypt. But when we reached that point where the Book of Tahot had lain on the bottom of the river, the will of Tahot pulled our son Merab out of the boat into the water and drowned him. Because of Tahot's magic that my husband had, he pulled our son's body back and he brought him to life again. And young Merab sat up and told us we were all going to be punished because we had the knowledge of the Book of Tahot and we were not to have that knowledge. And then he died again because my husband could not keep him alive. The same thing happened to me. And there, my husband brought my body back up onto the boat. And because we needed to have a fine burial, a proper burial, there wasn't time to go back to our home in Memphis. Instead, we returned to Coptos, and my husband had a fine burial for my son and I. 72 days it takes to prepare the body for burial and prepare the burial chamber. And then my husband started back home on the royal barge. He knew what was going to happen to him. He knew what was in store. So he took the Book of Tahot and he tied it fast to his body. And still, when the barge reached that point, by the will of Tahot, he was taken into the river and drowned. But because he had the Book of Tahot, his body was caught up in the lines of the royal barge, and his body was pulled all the way back down to Memphis. And the crocodiles and fish did not touch it because it was protected. Well, of course, when his father, the Pharaoh, saw that his son was dead and his family was missing, he prepared this fine burial chamber in which you stand. And Now we are separated. Neferkapta cannot lie with his wife and daughter in his burial chamber. We aren't captors. So, don't touch the Book of Tahot. Terrible things will happen to you. Neferkapta, or rather, Satnikamos listened. But he reached over to get that Book of Tahot anyway. And then the mummy sat up and said, are you going to steal it? Or do you want to bargain for it like a man? Let's play a game of Senet. A Senet is a gambling game similar to chess. Nobody could beat Sadnikamos at Senet. He said, we'll play. And so the Ka statues of Neferkaptar's wife and son set up the Senet board and arranged all the pieces, and the game began. Neferkapta declared himself the winner. He picked up the Senet board and bonk! He hit Satnikamos over the head. And Satnikamos found himself up to his ankles in the ground, and he couldn't move. Play again. Another game was played. Neferkapta won again. Bonk! This time, Satnikamos was up to his knees in the ground, and he knew there was no way he was going to win this game against Neferkapta. He remembered his brother Anchoras. You remember where Anchoras is? Back by the door, the entrance. He called out, Anchoras! Run as fast as the wind to our father and get his most powerful amulet. Bring it to me. I need it. And Anchoras ran back to the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh gave him his most powerful amulet, which was a breastplate of Khepri. And Anchoras ran back to the tomb of Neferkapta, and this time he did not hesitate to go through that dark tunnel. He went through that dark tunnel, and there he saw his brother still playing Senet. But all he could see of his brother was his head and his arm. The rest of him was under the ground. He ran into the tomb and put that amulet over his brother's head, and the magic of that brought him right out of the earth. They grabbed the Book of Tahot and took off. And now, Satnikamos had the Book of Tahot. He had all of the knowledge of the gods. He could have all of the secrets there were. None of the mysteries of the universe would be unknown to him. He told his father he had it. His father said, have you opened it? Have you read it? No. What you must do immediately is go return the Book of Tahot to Neferkapta. Take the stick of a beggar and wear a pan of burning charcoal on your head and return that book. Satnikamos thought about it for a little bit. But he had the Book of Tahot. He had all the power of the universe right there in his possession. He could think of nothing else. He didn't know where he was, who he was. He completely fell into chaos and made terrible decisions, neglected his wife, his job. He was attracted to things that would destroy his being, and eventually was in such a bad state that he went to his father and said, I made a mistake. And his father said, return the Book of Tahot. And so Satnikamos, with the stick of a beggar and a pan of burning charcoal on his head, went back into the tomb of Neferkapta, and when he placed the Book of Tahot back on that pillar, the tomb was once more illuminated, and it looked like it had never been disturbed. As he turned to leave, the mummy sat up. You're not finished. Go to Coptos, find the mummies of my wife and daughter, and bring them to me so we may rest together.
And so Satne Kamos, once again, got the royal barge, and he and his brother went to Coptos, searched for a long, long time until they found that tomb where Ahura and Merib were buried. They took the mummies, they returned them back to Memphis and back into the burial chamber. And because Satne Kamos had not read the Book of Tahot, his luck changed. He became a fine father and husband again. He was able to complete all of his responsibilities as a book for the Book of Tahot. And once again, he lived in Mayat and kept balance with his life. So I offer that story to you. Take it, think of it, see how it sits with you, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
I think after that, nothing else I was going to say or you were going to sing needs to be done. So I think I'm going to just extinguish the chalice, and we say that with, Tom, can you get that up? The chalice is extinguished. Thank you very much. Thank you, Katie. And Lisa, why don't you play whatever you want? Yeah. Have a lovely day. Goes on without a song. I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? Though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth it giveth. The darkness round me close, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost heart, and to that rock I cling. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? Have a good day. It was great. Yeah. I think certainly this crowd needed the talk. Yeah, it's not like, but even now, like, kids don't know even the Greek or the Roman myths anymore. But we definitely don't know